2 months ago, but no matter where I go, my message is the same, whether it's in Pinellas County or Palm Beach County. And I am here today for the same reason that each and every one of you are here. And that is because we are in a battle for the heart and soul of our country, and now is the time to fight. Now, it's also because, in spite of America's greatness, we're getting away from the things that make us special and make us unique. And I've realized that America is not too big to fail. Did you ever think it was possible? Could you ever imagine that the U.S. debt could be downgraded? Or that a United States president would consult with the Arab League or the United Nations before he consulted with the United States Congress? Or that a judge right here in the Bay Area would rule to use Islamic Sharia law instead of American law? So the reality is that the challenges we're facing today weren't just the fault of the Democrats. Republicans share in the blame. Yes. And what's worse is we're doing it to ourselves. Yes. We are spending money that we don't have, and we are bankrupting our nation fiscally and morally. We are borrowing money from countries that do not share our values and interests and jeopardizing our nation's sovereignty. Our $14.3 trillion national debt is making us weaker on the global stage, and it has now become our nation's greatest national security threat. And our tax system and regulations are stifling job creation and economic growth and driving jobs overseas. And I am outraged that there is a full frontal assault on private industry and capitalism by the National Labor Relations Board, and that there is an attempt for cap and trade in an end-run regulatory maneuver at the Environmental Protection Agency. And then finally, we have an entitlement system that is on a path to insolvency, and if we do not reform it, it is going to collapse on current beneficiaries, and for future generations, they are going to be burdened with crushing taxes, lower standard and quality of living, and a loss of personal freedom. And so on issue after issue, whether it's raising the debt limit or saving Medicare, we cannot afford to kick the can down the road once again. I'm proud to tell you that I was the first candidate in the entire country to sign the Cut, Cap, and Balance Pledge. And I'm the only candidate in this race who has fully embraced the Paul Ryan budget plan, and the only criticism that I have made of it is that it doesn't go far enough, fast enough. Because anyone who tells you that we can wait 25 years in order to save Medicare, or that we can balance the budget without reforming entitlements, just isn't being honest with you. And this is a line in the sand moment for America. And Republicans can't blink. We need to be on offense. We need to be aggressive. And more importantly, we cannot worry about political consequences. We need to be focused on what are the consequences to our country if we fail to act. And in 1980, I think each and every one of you would remember, Ronald Reagan asked a very simple question of the American people. He said, "Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago?" Well, today the question that we should be asking is, where do we want America to be 5 years from now? Because cutting spending, balancing the budget, reforming entitlements, those are tough choices. But they're also the things that we need to do in order to get our economy going again, in order to create jobs. And I believe that there is an economic resurgence here in America, right around the corner, where we can achieve that American economic prosperity, where we can recapture a national security platform based on peace through strength, where we oppose our enemies and support our allies, and where we can restore those foundational Judeo-Christian principles. But we cannot get our country back until we take back control of the United States Senate and make Barack Obama a one-term president. Because for all the hard work that we did to get Marco Rubio elected to the United States Senate, every vote that he takes on the big issues of the day are canceled out by Bill Nelson, who is the biggest cheerleader for the Obama agenda. And so in 2010, the people in this room and in rooms like it all over the state and all over the country, you helped create that first wave. But in 2012, it's time to send reinforcements to Washington, D.C. And not just any Republican, but Republicans who have the courage to say what needs to be said, and more importantly, the courage to do what needs to be done. Now, I know a lot of other folks in this race are going to come in and they're going to tell you about their accomplishments that they've made in the last year. And quite frankly, because of you, those accomplishments have been possible. They've actually even been popular. I've proven it when it wasn't popular. I was the only candidate fighting alongside with Marco Rubio back in the state legislature to eliminate property taxes and replace it with a consumption-based sales tax. I am the only candidate who has continued to speak out for years about the threats of Sharia Islam, not just on foreign soil, but from those who seek to destroy us from within. And I'm the only candidate in this race who voted to support offshore drilling off of Florida's coasts, and then even after the BP incident, did not waver in my support because it is so critical to our nation's national security and energy independence. So I'm here today, and I am not worried about losing an election. I'm worried about losing our country. And so I want to thank each and every one of you in this room for all that you do, all that you continue to do, and I hope that you will join our movement to fight Washington and save America. Thank you all so much.
You can take your microphone and be seated if you like.
Oh, can I stay here or no?
We're asking everybody to sit down.
Sit?
Yeah, please. You may have a glass of water. Okay, just want to make you comfortable. The first question. Will you pledge to fully repeal Obamacare?
Yes.
Second
If
question.
I can expand just briefly to say this. If we do not repeal Obamacare, that's why this election is so important. If Obamacare gets implemented in 2014, it will create an entitlement that we will never be able to recover from. That is the tipping point. That's why this is so important to repeal, defund, and ultimately replace with free market reforms. When I was in the state legislature back in 2010, we were one of the first groups to ever pass the Healthcare Freedom Act, which was unfortunately thrown out by the Florida Supreme Court. But in Washington, D.C., job number one is to repeal Obamacare so that we don't create another entitlement for 40 million people that is going to put our country right off of the cliff.
We're in a war on terror. Who are we fighting?
We are fighting a radical ideology of Sharia Islam. And in a lot of ways, we're also fighting ourselves because we are not even willing to admit that an enemy even exists. We cannot allow political correctness or multiculturalism or appeasement cripple our defenses at home or abroad. We see it far too often. We saw it recently with the court case in Tampa. We're seeing it now more and more with situations like the honor killing in this area as well. We recognize that there is an ideology that seeks to destroy the West and seeks to destroy America from within. We need to identify it and we need to fight back against it.
We do need healthcare reform. What is your plan?
The question is healthcare reform, and I think it's what's most important is that we put patients at the center of every decision. We need to make changes to the tax system so that the incentives are the same for individual healthcare as well as for companies that provide health insurance to their employees. We need to have regulatory reform so that patients and consumers can buy health insurance across state lines. We need to have litigation reform, something that when I was in the state legislature, I was a strong sponsor of tort reform to crack down on the junk lawsuits that have made doctors practice the type of defensive medicine that runs up the cost of medicine for everybody else. And if we have transparency in costs, and people have an opportunity to put their money into the system as opposed to a third-party payer, people are going to understand what the costs are and how to better spend their money. And what will happen in result is that costs will come down and quality of care will go up, just like it does in every other sector of our economy. And I think what's most important, and the battle that we face in this issue of healthcare reform, is that we must go back out and be certain that we define healthcare as a responsibility and not healthcare as a right.
We all know the Paul Ryan plan does not affect anyone 55 years and older with regards to Medicare. Do you endorse the Paul Ryan plan, and why or why not?
I think I mentioned a few moments ago, I'm the only candidate in this race that endorsed the Paul Ryan plan, and my only criticism is that it doesn't go far enough, fast enough to balance the budget and get us back on a path to fiscal stability. But I support it because if we do not fix Medicare, it is going to go insolvent. And that's not just me saying it. The Medicare trustees have come out with a report that say Medicare is going bankrupt in 2024. If we don't change the system for future generations, if we don't make it more patient-centered, healthcare inflation and more baby boomers who are coming onto the system right now is going to bankrupt this system, and it's going to collapse. It's going to result in impacts to benefits for current beneficiaries, and it's going to have an impact on future generations who not only are not going to be able to access these benefits, they're going to pay higher taxes for it. They're going to have a lower standard of living because of it. They're going to lose personal freedoms. This is a line in the sand issue. I'm the only Republican candidate running for United States Senate that came out in support of the Ryan plan. And as I shared earlier, anyone who tells you that we can kick the can for 25 years down the road in order to fix this system just simply isn't being honest with you.
What do you think is the biggest problem with our economy, and what actions would you propose?
The biggest problem with our economy right now are twofold. One is there's uncertainty. The second biggest problem have been the policies of the last 2 years. And what I mean by that is quite simple, is that there are attempts to raise taxes, to increase regulations. We're seeing right now the backdoor attempts at the National Labor Relations Board to try to implement card check in a way that they can't get it passed through Congress. When I was in the state legislature, I led the initiative to save the right to a secret ballot in the workplace. When they found out that they couldn't get it passed through Congress, now they're trying to dictate to Boeing where they can create jobs. Now they're trying to shorten the time for a union election in the workplace. These are frontal assaults on capitalism, on private industry. The EPA is doing it with the end around to try to have a cap and trade program without congressional authority. These are the types of regulations that are stifling economic growth that we need to eliminate, and we need to be able to put more power back into the free market economy to create jobs and to be able to grow our economy again.
Will you sign a pledge that you will not support any form of fixed rail public transportation?
I can tell you this, that when I was in the legislature, the legislation that was passed to support it, I came out recently and agreed with Governor Scott on not funding the high-speed rail. And I think it's the same with the Sunrail. I don't believe those are the types of projects that are the types of infrastructure projects the government spends on that are creating jobs that are out there. I think it is very important for us to have private sector job creation and make sure that government isn't subsidizing those types of infrastructure projects and work projects to build more infrastructure that people aren't using.
What are we going to do to eliminate our dependence on foreign oil?
Well, let me just share with you this. I think it is critical for us to drill domestically off the coast of Florida, in the Gulf, in Anwar, as well as the new